I am in support of all different kinds of housing being available and coming to South Portland. More dense housing in the east end of South Portland would be a really good thing. You know, with climate change and sea level rise, it wasn't an issue in the 2012 comp plan, but I think it is very much an issue now. And when we think about where we're going to be developing and building housing, I think it's something that really has to be significant in the lens that we look at, that we don't want to develop in areas that have high liability for costly repairs and damages.
Milan, I believe, has some information of the city's working on climate resilience planning and looking at funding to do overlay maps to say this area, if we build in this area, not to say we're not going to build on the coast ever because we are a coastal community, but if we build in this area, what special things should we be doing to make that building resilient? In the business community, a lot of housing is around financing, and you're not going to get financing for projects if they're going to say, oh, in 20 years, you're going to be severely damaged, and I'm not going to get my money back from the bank. So there are also market forces that will help decide projects that are resilient as well.
So in July, there's a workshop to look at the One Climate Future Plan and what it means for next steps on building and land use. And then we have requested some funding to take a closer look at specifically coastal resilience overlay, which Ryan summarized well. If you're interested in that topic, drop by the office or send me an email. We can talk more about what the scope of that might be. As a sort of early teaser, I'll say this with caution because it's Portland's effort and we might not land in the exact same place where Portland lands, but Portland's already got this underway and they're looking at the higher risk areas of the community and how they can, through regulation, create safer and more resilient development into the future. So they're talking a lot about the same topics and they're further along in making a proposal to the council on what to do. So you could take a peek there just to see what kind of things are being discussed. But we'll have our own version of that hopefully coming forward soon.
So I'm here to request that any of the housing solutions take note of where these needed homes are to be located and to seriously consider the health and welfare of any human, plant, or species when doing so. This is the time when politics and money must not be the driving factors. This is a time for us as a human community to come together and to plan for the future and welfare of us all. We are a human species and a community dependent on the health of the Mother Earth. Let's put her back into our housing needs. Let's look at nature and try to get this straight for once. Thank you.
Some good things are coming that way. We worked for energy efficiency standards in the state and actually across the country. Housing, when they're putting resources in, are now raising the bar each time in terms of what they require. And then developers, my organization included, are raising the bar further to say, let's go beyond what we have and make the housing not only really habitable, but also as energy efficient as possible. So we're creating passive housing now. When you tighten up the entire building and super insulate it, and you do things like triple glazed windows, you will make a building that people would suffocate inside, which is what you want. And then you add an air exchange system that brings in fresh air into the system. And if you can create that building, it costs more to add those features that make it super energy efficient. But you subtract out a heating and cooling system altogether out of the building, and what you're left with is a place that is no different in temperature, whether you're upstairs or downstairs or in this part of the room or near the window or anything else, any different than if you were to hike up a mountain, you go up another 100 feet. It's not much different than the 100 feet below it. So that kind of technology is here. It followed LEED certification that really pushed towards reusing materials and not starting with new materials, making sure that air quality was going to be there. So you're going back to things like linoleum that are naturally based instead of carpeting that is outgassing, exactly the kind of chemicals you're talking about because they're made from the petrochemical industry. So we're actually creating housing that is not only energy efficient, but has extremely high air quality and a high quality of life, and then also has sound deadening features such that you could have this house right next to a busy road and you watch an 18-wheeler go by or a Harley Davidson and you don't hear it because it's so well insulated. So that makes for nice housing, and we're doing that now all the time. So, and the next step, which we're creating, we're building some housing right where the Mercy Hospital campus is to electrify the buildings fully so that there's no use of fossil fuels whatsoever. And they're all teed up for when we have 100% solar and wind-driven energy, these buildings will have no environmental impact whatsoever. And for now, it's very tiny amounts of energy to run, highly efficient lighting and air movement systems, but they even get better from there. So what you're talking about is actually happening, and it is the difference between some of the newer housing and some of the housing we have in existing stock. So we're slowly going to improve things with that lens in mind.
I was just listening to a podcast last night that interviewed folks from the Rocky Mountain Institute, and they mentioned this report talking about how urban sprawl could account for a third of all greenhouse gas emissions directly or indirectly. You look at building and transportation as we spread out, and you look at places like Stockholm versus you look at what we do in some of our communities in the United States, there's a big difference. I thought this was interesting as well, and I put it in here, but then I saw Rick's slide, and it's even worse in this area than this national racial wealth gap. The racial wealth gap when it comes to housing in this area is just astounding. And so the Rocky Mountain Institute, talking about climate again, over 70% of new housing takes the form of detached single-family homes, which use 64% more energy per occupant on average than attached and multifamily homes. So this idea of housing, transportation, climate, it's all connected. And if we solve for one, we solve for all. I encourage everybody to look at the work of some of our panelists and to continue the conversation, to continue to gauge on what's happening at the state, what's happening at city council. And as you do it, be nice. We're all doing our best. So thank you so much.